Good afternoon. I'm Anna Kirkov, and on behalf of my entire team at Reed Meadham, I'm delighted to welcome you to the Media Mastermind Keynote with Miramax CEO Mike Lang. It was less than a year ago that Miramax was sold by Walt Disney Company to an investor group. With the ownership change, Mike Lang was named CEO. He had worked closely with the new owners, demonstrating his ability to understand the value of a movie library in today's world. But probably more importantly, the value of Miramax, its content, and its many natural extensions in the world of tomorrow. Through his knowledge and his vision, Mike has relaunched a worldwide business, and Miramax has certainly caught our attention. Mike brought a unique combination of experience to the job. First and foremost was his experience in cable and broadcasting, honed during his years working amongst the News Corp top executives. But it was also at Fox that Lang proved that he was amongst a unique breed of executives, those with a keen understanding of the emerging world of digital and social media. He led Fox's formative acquisition of MySpace and also led the creation of MySpace Music with the leading music companies. And also during this time, Mike was leading the joint venture negotiations between Fox and NBC Universal and later Disney and ABC on the entity that would become Hulu. Just 10 months ago, Mike Lang brought all of this, plus his incredible energy, to Miramax. Mike knew, I think from the start, that with the great Miramax brand, business areas such as TV and film production, acquisition and distribution could really be reinvigorated. Shortly after taking the reins, the company was rebranded as Miramax, removing the word film from its logo and leaving many doors open. From the outset, Mike began developing multiple paths to exploiting the value of Miramax's amazing filmed assets. Mike has recruited a global television sales team empowered to license the more than 700 film titles in its distinguished library. And for the first time in history, Miramax is participating on the exhibition floor at MIPCOM. I know we've all enjoyed watching the incredible progress Miramax has made in the 10 short months under his leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO of Miramax, Mike Lang.
Thank you, Anne. That was an incredibly nice introduction. I'm truly flattered. If I could get a copy of that and share it with my wife, who gave me a lot of grief as being labeled a media mastermind. I'm not really sure about mastermind. I'm barely coherent most of the time, but I do appreciate that. Truly, though, it's an honor and privilege to be here at MIPCOM today. Thank you for this opportunity to reintroduce our company and the Miramax brand to the distinguished international audience of television, digital, and entertainment leaders. I'd like to take a moment to remind you all about a media company that was almost forgotten, Miramax.
Don't make me do this.
Mike, I'm telling you, your money.
Is the sex satisfying?
You're terrible, Muriel.
Prepare to receive the true Lord!
The only thing that looks like Dickie is you.
What business is it of yours? Where I'm from, friendo?
I drink your milkshake.
Real hard to be the shepherd.
save the future.
Thank you. We're really thrilled to have so many great film moments at our fingertips. It's an unbelievable library with some of the most intelligent, risk-taking, and crowd-pleasing films, and just incredible filmmakers and talent, as you can see. When we started as the new Miramax less than a year ago, we knew the library presented a tremendous opportunity. Not only does Miramax offer one of the greatest sources of independent, award-winning films, but for no fault of their own, it just wasn't a focus of its previous owners. Miramax was basically closed for business as Blu-rays began to reach the farthest corners of the world, as cable television networks expanded on a global level, and as the digital explosion took place, where the people around the world began to take control of how they consumed media. We believed in the power of the library, and we knew things had to change with two central premises. First, look to exploit our library anywhere and everywhere, and two, innovate at all times in a very entrepreneurial way. Basically, the future had to be to innovate or die. And in just 10 months since buying the company, we have begun to lay a global footprint that has hopefully sent a clear message to all of you that Miramax is back and we are open for business. Now, how did we get here? Well, on the screen is a picture of where we started and the boxes of contracts, development projects, and scripts, along with the 70 film labs around the world where our library was housed. Clearly, when you look at that, we had a lot of work to do. It was part Indiana Jones, maybe a little bit of Columbo, but we sorted through all the boxes and film labs and took stock of what we had. First and foremost were the movies themselves. More than 700 of them, 4 Best Pictures awards in the last 15 years, a total of 284 Academy Award nominations, 68 Oscars, such classic films as Pulp Fiction, Chicago, Good Will Hunting, and Shakespeare in Love. We then began building a fantastic team. Everyone was handpicked, each with intense industry knowledge, but also the curiosity to ask the question, why it has been done a certain way in the past, and could we do it differently? They also have to be willing to fail. That's how you ultimately innovate and affect change within an organization, we believe. In a way, I like to believe that our company is a bit more Silicon Valley than Hollywood in that respect. It's been a very busy time, and to be honest, occasionally it's been a tad overwhelming. There are a lot of days when I feel a lot like this kid that's in the picture. But overall, we've been able to build the framework to ultimately serve up the pent-up demand for these films around the world. Another key to our strategy is finding the best partners who treat our product right and get it to market as quickly as possible. Everyone from Lionsgate to Focus Features to Netflix and Hulu and many more. We appreciate all their support and efforts. We've covered many territories with these great partners. For instance, Beth Meinhardt, our head of digital, has inked several long-term deals with Netflix and Hulu in the US and internationally, with Netflix in Latin America and Hulu in Japan. And we believe there will be many more to come. And at a time where many companies are increasingly outsourcing or cutting their sales organizations, we opened our first international office in London and hired a remarkable team, Joe Patrick, our head of worldwide sales, and Danny Goldman, our head of Europe. We hope you'll get to know them this week at our MIPCOM booth, as well as in the coming months ahead. We also launched the Miramax Experience app on Facebook, a new kind of application unlike any other that has been put on Facebook in the past. The app, that's still in beta, allows users to view Miramax films and interact with their friends, leveraging the social graph via games and other features. It also allows users to view our films on multiple devices, including their PC, iPad, and television. We believe that cross-platform is a key to growing the digital transactional business. Ultimately, we hope to offer users the opportunity to buy films and store them in their own cloud-based digital locker, to then access that content anywhere they want across all devices, real interoperability being the key benefit there. We've also excited to have launched the app not only in the US, but abroad in the UK and Turkey, with many more countries to come. But given the globalization of entertainment, we believe we're just starting to scratch the surface. Once again, we are very bullish on television and digital sales, which together represents the key to reaching these audiences worldwide. This is a big reason why we're here at MIPCOM. We're also working with some of the world's leading programmers and platform operators to launch soon a Miramax-branded cable network, a general entertainment channel featuring hundreds of films from our library, but also acquired movies and TV shows and exclusive windows for new films and TV series that we're developing. The potential partners we're talking to now are starting to believe what we've sensed from the beginning, that the Miramax brand resonates with consumers worldwide, particularly upscale cable and satellite subscribers, where Miramax means Oscar caliber, cutting edge, bold and diverse, and of course, high quality with an international appeal. So stay tuned for more to come on that. We believe that all of these various platforms can be complementary and coexist together, even where there's overlap. Say, for instance, like offering a catch-up digital video on demand window around our specific Miramax television avails that we're offering. The reason for optimism is simple. As we see it, it's happening in your markets. We think everything starts with the consumer. They're not focused on windows or what schedule they can watch something or on what certain device. They want it completely on their own terms. Younger audiences, especially like my children, not only want content anytime on any device, but actually expect it. And throughout the globe, as new television and digital platforms emerge, demand will only grow in this way exponentially. Well, at this point, you're probably a bit bored with me being up here by myself, so without further delay, I would like to introduce my good friend and special guest for a one-on-one chat. For most of you in the audience, Ted Sarandos needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Ted has over 20 years of experience in media and is recognized in the industry as quite an innovator. As Chief Content Officer at Netflix since 2000, Ted oversees the company's content acquisition through relationships with studios, networks, filmmakers, and producers. Ted has enabled Netflix to provide the broadest variety of films for consumers. During his tenure, the Netflix library has increased from 2,000 to 100,000 titles, and today more than 17,000 movies and TV episodes are available to watch through instant streaming. Under Ted's watch, the Netflix service has also proven a valuable alternative distribution method for smaller independent films that might not otherwise be seen at all. Just like many others in this world, Ted began his career in the video business. He eventually landed at Video City, where he was responsible for product and merchandising. While there, he showed signs of what was to come, and he negotiated the first revenue-sharing agreement that reduced the cost of content from all studios. I think I need to talk to him a little bit about that one. And at Netflix, he has helped build a company that is a leader in innovation and exceptional customer service. Under Ted's leadership, Netflix recently signed a deal that will allow subscribers to instantly stream new film output from DreamWorks Animation directly to their homes or through internet devices. And today, Ted is deeply involved in developing Netflix's push towards the future, as the company seeks to expand globally, offering both Hollywood and specialized local content to markets everywhere. Ted is also part of the fabric of the industry. He's on the Film Advisory Board for the Tribeca Film Festival, on the Retail Advisory Board for the Digital Entertainment Group, and he also serves as a trustee for the International Documentary Association. Listed on Variety's Global 50 as one of the most influential people in independent film distribution, as well in the Hollywood Reporter's Indie Power 50, let me bring out my good friend, Ted Sarandos.
Make me sound pretty good. Thanks.
So what Ted and I were hoping to do was just have kind of a casual chat, fireside chat, if you want to call it that, and talk about the various issues. And I'll just start it off. It seems like your company's been in the news a little bit. The last few months. And we've gotten a lot of coverage for your splitting up your streaming and your DVD business in the US into two companies, Netflix and Quickster. Can you explain to the group the rationale and whether this is a global strategy or just in the US?
Sure. Well, that's certainly has made some headlines. But as you kind of described earlier, it's interesting, we were born a DVD through the mail company. But we were actually born as a digital distribution company at heart, which is why we named the company Netflix to start with. And we quickly became known and loved as a DVD company. And as we more become a global brand and more become a streaming global brand, the DVD by mail business is very strictly US and domestic. So the idea was to create a separate brand that could actually continue to nurture and grow the DVD through the mail business, but by offering more and more brand clarity to Netflix as a global streaming product. So there's a couple of other things that, in fact, that we're trying to find things at scale globally. Like, so as an example, our deal with Starz, which was also in the news quite a bit, was also very uniquely a domestic opportunity, where those rights, they don't have those rights globally. So we're looking more and more at how do we acquire more and more content from multiple territories for streaming and ways to maintain the DVD business that people love so much in the US.
You also recently launched your service in Latin America with additional international markets to come. As you spread around the globe, how do you think about content licensing, and are there certain markets that you're starting to think that could be more interesting, and why? It'd be helpful to understand that.
Sure. Global licensing is always kind of a pipe dream, right? Because all kinds of distribution has to be physically fragmented because things had to be physically distributed. So in a pure digital world, there really is no need for fragmentation of distribution. So there are some consumer barriers around language and local taste and those kind of things. But what's incredible, and I think when you walk around this selling floor, is the world feels pretty small when you're at MIPCOM. And the English-speaking world seems even smaller.
Right.
So when you go after content, and you have to think about, one is, can you license content under universal business terms, where cultures are so varied, and the other is how do you take content that's uniquely popular in one part of the world and introduce it to another part of the world? And the old tools don't seem to work very well. Trying to create a huge global brand around people who might be interested in a specific piece of content from Brazil and Portuguese in St. Louis is a tough business. Yeah. So all the things that we've invested in and gotten pretty good at around personalization really lend themselves well in this area.
Right.
So we're really excited about these things. Like as an example, when you're walking around the floor, you'll see a show here called H2O. It's Australian tweener TV series that is phenomenally popular in the US and in Canada through Netflix. And there's a show that basically hadn't been distributed. Across Latin America, the CBS show Jericho, incredibly popular. And there's a show that has kind of run through its useful revenue life in the old systems. Right. So the main thing I think we have to do when we think about global is put aside all of our kind of preconceived notions about what people like and what they don't. Because all of that's influenced by data that is influenced by what can be legally accessed by a consumer. So really, if you want to see what people really want, look at what they're stealing. And in terms of what are interesting parts of the world, I'm fascinated with Brazil. I mean, we've launched all of Latin America a couple weeks ago. And Brazil is a vibrant economy, has this really great mix of taste for US content and local pride and in their own content, which is fantastic. Really incredible market for social media. There's a comedian in Brazil, and his name is Rafinha, is unbelievably popular. In fact, he was just named the most influential man on Twitter in the world. He has 3 million followers only in Brazil.
You don't have 3 million?
No, I don't. I'm one of his. So, but as an example, we licensed his stand-up shows for Brazil, and he tweets about them, and overnight they become the most watched content in Brazil. So it's a really interesting economy both because of the economy and just because of the excitement of the population around content, around movies, around television shows, around entertainment. It's a great entertainment culture.
Great.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about some things, all right? So you obviously had this great mastermind deal to acquire the studio, and you end up with this amazing library. Where from here?
Well, in any company like this, you're always want to be very focused on the core mission of why you bought the company in the first place. Yeah. And the core mission for us was really the assumption that the library had been underexploited, that in many parts of the world, people didn't know about the product being available, or that new businesses like digital were just not exploited the way they could be. Yeah. And so we've been really focused on that mission across the board. We're a pretty small team. We've got 50 people, 60 people in the company, so it's difficult for us to take more on than that. However, we're starting to try to build the building blocks that we think ultimately could be more than just the library itself, exploiting through license relationships. First and foremost is clearly international. The international business represented a very small percentage of the revenue of this company early on. And I think already with the team, we've tried to expand that at all corners of the world where in many cases wasn't even sure what library was available. We've not only been able to present that, but we've even freed up more content with many of the titles that have reverted back to us after being pre-sold early on. Second part of it is our owned and operated platforms, leveraging the Miramax brand, be it maybe it's cable networks, maybe it's like our Miramax Facebook app, things of that nature, where clearly it's not going to be a big aggregator of content. But for that brand and for people that want to go to the the kind of high quality independent filmmaking or independent content that we can offer, that's the place as well.
Do you distinguish between the digital business and the TV business, one versus the other, or one
more
important than the other?
It seems to me, I mean, again, and people in this room probably have a lot more experience on this as well, is that the avails between both are starting to kind of meld into one.
Right.
That when we have conversations with TV buyers, one of the first questions they ask is, what can we do to access the digital rights in some either catch-up window or some ability in regards to that? And then likewise, as we license more on the digital side, clearly like with folks like yourself, it's a cross-platform play, where it's directed at television. And so, my sense is that going to continue, and that we need to be, very careful in a way not to play all the aspects and allow every certain client the ability to have value related to the content, and not dilute it by being everywhere at the same time. And so it takes a little bit of a classic windowing strategy, which the industry has been very good at in the past, but now in a new world of digital trying to do that as well.
How much does the window strategy influenced by piracy or lack of or fear of piracy?
With the exception of few markets like we were talking about Korea, piracy really has not been the bigger issue for our company or for our library.
Because it's been the catalog focus?
It's been lack of exploitation, right? Yeah, sure. Just not getting it out there. And I have a theory on this, and it was one of the reasons in Hulu that we were involved in that, is that I think all consumers at some point in their life, whatever market of the world, don't want to pirate. They really don't.
I agree.
Maybe not college kids, but ultimately over time, they do not want to pirate. And that the way to then react to that is to offer legitimate, great service for them to access that. And when you offer them a legitimate service, either with some free ad-supported component or subscription, or hopefully digital transactional as well, which will grow beyond just iTunes, my bias is that we're going to see a lot more demand because of that. And so really, our driver is more market-based versus piracy. Yeah. This is a market that maybe we've not been able to enter. Maybe there's not as many opportunities on the television side. What can we do to expand digitally more aggressively?
So for me, our international surprises have been, the 3 million Twitter followers for a comedian in Brazil. Right. Certainly the success of an old CBS show all across. The fact that Back to the Future is a hugely popular movie everywhere in Latin America. Those have been surprises for me. What's been a surprise for you as you reached out across the world?
One of the biggest surprises was, just talking to many of you in the room and finding out that you didn't even know we had some of the avails out there. Part of that is really a function of these output deals, where I think, a major media company has an output deal, they offer library to that output provider, and then never go to the other players in that particular market afterwards and say, well, would you be interested in some of the content? And so we're doing that. We're taking much more of an a la carte basis. We're not going to have output deals. We don't need them at this point. So that's number one. Number two is, again, some of these emerging markets. We launched on our beta on Facebook in Turkey. And we went to the Facebook people and asked them, well, we want to test a few markets and then eventually roll it out. And Turkey was #1 on their list because it's the fastest growing Facebook market in the world, believe it or not. And so they really wanted us to go there into Turkey and to try that out. Now, if you've been...
It's a difficult market for non-Turkish content.
Yeah, sure, no question. And so, if you were sitting around a room and saying, okay, what market do you want to go into first? Probably Turkey wouldn't come up, but Facebook has that knowledge. They understand what's going on. And so far, we've been really surprised by the amount of traffic we're getting there. So those have been the two learns. Our guess is, as we go and expand more, we're going to learn a lot more about the various markets.
Yeah.
So, talking about technology, I wanted to ask you a little bit. You mentioned about the algorithmic, the secret sauce, the sausage machine that has made Netflix so special and innovative. Help us understand on that algorithmic, what are you learning in terms of the streaming business? Like in terms of what kinds of content are more valuable in streaming than maybe when your traditional DVD in the mail? And what do you think that evolves to in the future as you look out in terms of global expansion?
So the DVD through the mail business was very movie-centric. 85% plus of the shipments were movies on DVD. As we've grown the streaming business, first out of necessity, because most of the movies were locked up in these output deals you were talking about, and the TV content was just fresher than the movie content. But what happened was, over that time, is TV viewing on Netflix versus DVD through the mail is about 50, sometimes 60% of viewing is TV episodes now. in the season after model. So we don't have anything day after broadcast like Hulu does in the US, but everything we have is previous season and the entire history of the show. But people have really grown to love this, the activity of watching, particularly these really highly serialized shows. Mad Men and Breaking Bad are doing particularly well on Netflix right now, where people can get into a show that they missed the first go-around. And the interesting part when you think about those shows is, you know, Breaking Bad's been on the air for 3 years, or it's in its 4th year now, but every night at Netflix, the most watched episode is the first episode of the first season. So these are brand new people coming into this show, you know, 4 years later.
Especially like a serial show like that.
Yeah, because I think
you can't just drop in on.
And they think they missed the window.
Yeah.
So, and I think DVD has done a lot to seed that behavior of binging through a lot of episodes and not knowing that you're not going to miss the most important one this week or next week. So the big migration one has been, you know, watching how it's gone from much less movie-centric to much more TV-centric. And it's not, that can be misperceived as Netflix giving up on movies, because it's not. It's just us recognizing what the consumer is saying they want. And we put a lot of effort behind movies and a lot behind TV shows, and the taste-based algorithms that we use to recommend, they complement each other really nicely. So your TV taste is very informative about your movie taste and vice versa. So I think I think people blur the lines between TV and movies, and we're seeing that in the data. Both because the quality is so much better than it ever was. There's a whole like cinemization of television that's taking place. And they don't see it as an episode of a show. They might much more like to think of it as like a 13-hour movie that they can watch in whatever bites that they want.
Well, clearly you guys have already announced some original programming and getting into that space. And you know, can you tell us a little bit about where that started and where it may head for you guys in the future?
Sure. We're well, watching that behavior that I'm just talking about right now, what I come to find out is that the economics of these very highly serialized TV shows are very challenged, because a big chunk of the revenue from you know, from these shows comes from DVD sales and syndication television. And both of those markets are tough the more syndicated a show is. DVD, just because TV box sets sales are on the decline all around the world. And in the syndication market, it's very difficult to sell a 1-hour serialized drama that's going to air every day at 4 o'clock. So, so the shows are getting tougher to sell. So for us, I'm looking at, will they be fewer of them produced? And now, you know, in the U.S., the growing audience for it is typically on pay television, Showtime, HBO, Stars, and those are the ones who are least likely to want to sell those shows to me in the season after model. So I figured at some point we're going to may have to develop the muscle ourselves of creating and distributing this content. Now, I don't mean create in the sense that we have a development department and all that thing. There's incredible, you know, really well-produced shows that, you know, that get into production, get financed in some cases. The most recent, so the big one that we announced was House of Cards. Got big news all around the world. David Fincher directing and Kevin Spacey starring, and his first time he's ever done any television work. And this is kind of television, I guess. And so that created a lot of news. And then we've actually moved more aggressively in the channel a little bit. So we've got Borgia, that is actually an English language French production, but it's making its debut on Netflix in the US, and it's sold to various other suppliers around the world. And then, and I'm very excited actually about one that's going to, actually you're such a great interviewer, you get a scoop today, because there's a show that we're going to actually premiere on Netflix in the US, Canada, and Latin America that we're really excited about. It's called Lilyhammer. It's being offered here on the floor today for other territories. And I think I saw the star is here somewhere. Where's Steve Van Zandt right here? Steve Van Zandt is the star of Lilyhammer. So this is an example of, I think it's a great example of the internationalization potential of content. Lilyhammer is a show filmed in Norway. It's in dual language, English and Norwegian. And so when we air it in the US, it'll be in that format. When it airs in Norway, it's the reverse subtitles, and in the US, we'll have it, you know, in the opposite. And in Latin America, it'll all be Spanish subtitled. And I think the ability to zero in on people's taste, you can overcome a lot of the kind of preconceived prejudice around, you know, does content can't be subtitled, or does it have to be in English? Do they can they not have accents? So, I mean, there's a lot of product that where I think that what is proven is that Hollywood to the world is a big business, no question. But I think the world to the world is a bigger business. So what we're, you know, really trying to do is connect the great content of the world to the people of the world.
Now, related to that, you guys announced your DreamWorks animation deal on the output side in terms of new films. Is that also a strategy that you guys see yourself doing in markets around the world as well as domestically?
It would be my preference that these deals weren't so exclusive. So for us to do the DreamWorks deal, what that means is that in the United States, DreamWorks movies won't be on television in the subscription window.
Right.
They'll move from HBO to Netflix. And that, for my preference, would be that we could all figure out a way to recraft these business models and share the windows a little bit more effectively. Because I think what's happening is that the consumers are valuing exclusivity a little bit less, and distributors are still valuing it very high.
Right.
So,
well, especially because many of those windows are very, very long. I mean, in some markets less, I understand, but in the U.S. it's as much as 7 years.
Yeah, 9, 10 years. Yeah. And then in the, typically it's more like 15, 18 months.
Yep.
But that still gets pretty long in the tooth. That means the movie content gets pretty long in the tooth. So either you wait out the first window or you wait into the first window and compete for it. And what I'm prepared to do either, but it would be my first preference would be to figure out a way to make something that makes more economic sense. So those really exclusive long deals encumber other studios from doing the kind of innovative stuff that you're doing because they control the point-to-point distribution during those windows.
Well, it's also, I mean, consumers don't understand windows, especially younger consumers. They have no...
Or usage rules.
Rules or things like that. And so it's difficult to try to communicate those restrictions.
Yeah.
Clearly, you want to value exclusivity at some point along the way, but whether it needs to be that long a period, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, we don't value exclusivity. Lilyhammer will be exclusive on Netflix, and House of Cards will be exclusive on Netflix, and Borgia. So, yeah.
When you're financing it, I guess things change a little bit, right? Now you know how HBO feels.
Exactly, exactly.
So, what is your view about, one of the things, speaking about HBO, is that, one of the things that I think made them so successful, and, was Steve here, he could have, Sopranos, is the way that they promoted, cultivated the audience, and built it up. So much unlike our crazy business in film, you open one weekend and you hope it works, right? And then if it doesn't work, it's like, oh my gosh. But television business is a lot different. I mean, shows like The Sopranos, shows like Mad Men took a while to build an audience and then became, cultural institutions and did very well financially. How does Netflix think about that in terms of building those audiences over time, the same way that any kind of channel tries to do that on their shows?
It's a particular challenge for us because Netflix is a brand about personalization. So to wrap the brand around a piece of content the way HBO does during those shows, first of all, it creates a bunch of kind of brand competition underneath the HBO umbrella, which I think is also difficult to navigate. But for us is, what we're hoping is, the real excitement about Netflix when I joined the company in 2000, and the first time I met Reed was in 1999, and he talked about Netflix almost exactly like it sits right now. Downloading instead of streaming, but the exact same product.
Right.
And the interesting thing was he thought the opportunity wasn't necessarily, everyone was talking about digital distribution, but Reed had the kind of insight was, people don't sit around the dinner table talking about how a movie was distributed. They talk about did they love it or not. So the thing, and the studio P&L is not really heavily influenced by how much it costs to ship prints around. So the thing you can really help on is marketing.
Right.
Can we use the power and the tools of personalization and the internet to improve the studio economics around marketing?
Yep.
So for me to come in and do original programming and then just kind of follow the same, buy billboards and bus stations and radio ads, would seem to be quite, the reverse of what we got into this for. We really think that we can use these same algorithms to launch a show very rapidly, put it in the hands of the people who are going to love it the most, and then it's kind of the opposite approach of releasing a movie, where you try to get it on as many screens as possible and get as many people in the seats the first week, and then you have 50% fall off the second week.
Right.
And we're going the opposite way, which is let's build the base, build it on the show, people who love the show. And then they'll tell their friends, and then the algorithms will also influence and put the show in front of more and more people. We had a lot of success with that on the Star show of Spartacus. Netflix and Spartacus, Netflix and Stars, we distribute Stars, so we had Spartacus on the same time as they did, and we built a really large audience doing nothing but putting it predominantly in front of people who really loved 300 first.
Right.
And then the show was really well received, and then the audience grew and grew and grew. We had millions of people watching it on Netflix every week.
Good.
Yeah. So one of your big initiatives upcoming is Digital Locker, or ultraviolet. You're very excited about. I mean, there's different flavors of it, but
Yeah.
You believe this is real? This is like the behavior will be real?
Well, I think as an industry, we have to believe it. We really don't have a choice, right? You know, we're very excited about Netflix and other subscription opportunities digitally, but if the home entertainment business as we know it today in terms of the transactional business goes away, that's not good for anyone in this room, you know, in terms of the ability to finance and develop new product. And so we just took a big step back and we've looked at that digital transactional model, and it's not a really great experience for consumers, right? It's very difficult for consumers to know when they buy something that it works on any device that they have, that they could use it when they go on vacation or put it in their car when they're driving. It's really much tied within either an Apple ecosystem or best of luck trying to make it work otherwise. Right. In fact, it's one of the reasons why I believe your streaming business is so successful, is it's so easy for consumers, either through their Blu-ray player or their Xbox player, to just be able to access on their television. Yeah. And so clearly, if we can create a digital locker experience that was easy for consumers, it was interoperable, that you would at least understand whether that was an opportunity. But I think it goes more than that too. I think, you know, there has to be some serious discussions about pricing. I think, you know, currently the DVD business is probably priced too high in terms of what you're asking consumers to buy, and that you're going to have to be a lot more aggressive in terms of that, especially for library product. I mean, I'm not sure about new product. Second is, I think, you know, in our business, we're not really big fans for rental video on demand. We believe that, you know, the world should kind of be structured in a way that if you want access, you subscribe to Netflix and you can snack, and sometimes the content will be up there, sometimes it won't be. If you really want that film, you should buy it and not rent it. And especially if you've seen it already, the idea of renting it for 24 hours doesn't make sense. And so we're trying to work that all through. It's a lot more complicated than you would think. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know how many people in the audience use photo sharing, but that's like 90% cloud, basically. That entire business is cloud. 95% of the software industry in the world is now through cloud-based transactions. So I'm hopeful that the movie business gets there. And I think it really starts less so with you know, industry consortiums and studios talking about what they should do. It's really more about partnering with the strong technology companies and retailers and figure out what they think will work, and then trying to develop a plan that could work in that way, that ultimately is very focused on what works for consumers. Now, hopefully that will create a purchase transactional market. It's difficult for me today. I mean, there's a lot of people that say no one will ever buy anything on the internet ever again. I refuse to believe that, and I'm hopeful that we can buck that trend.
I'm like you. I watch my kids and wonder, you know, how much they are like the rest of the world. Yeah. My kids are older than yours, but they it's interesting. The economy of access versus ownership is what I feel like is happening, where, you know, my kids will pay a lot of, you know, a premium to have access to things and very little to actually own them anymore. And it's so foreign. In their lifetime, my DVD collection has gone from being the coolest thing in the world to being, you know, why do you have these discs around the house? So to imagine how it will evolve.
No question. I mean, clearly in the physical world. But, you know, it's been interesting, too. We have found that there's still a robust marketplace for ownership, even in the physical world. You know, we're releasing this week Pulp Fiction on Blu-ray for the first time. Believe it or not, it had never been released on Blu-ray. Probably one of the most influential films of the last 20 years. Never released on Blu-ray. You know, Quentin did an incredible amount of special edition product, and it's going to do very well for our partners, Lionsgate and us. And I think, again, it's something unique and different that may be different than what's available in the access model. Right. That really, for the same reason that people watched our films on television, but we'll still then go buy the DVD as well. I think that ultimately, if we can find a way to make that work, it's good for the entire industry, because ultimately the value that's been created in that home entertainment marketplace helps finance the films that we all love and television shows as well. And so our hope is to try to find a way to do both over time. Yeah.
And what do you think if taking a giant leap forward and saying that doesn't happen? In the alternative, what happens in a Is it just a skinnier world?
Just a skinnier world, probably. Now that may not be bad, by the way, because like you mentioned, there's a lot of filmmakers and product that's been able to find a home because of subscription, right? But it's going to put significant pressure on margins in general. both in terms of producing films, but also marketing films. I mean, that issue's, you know, a big issue in the movie business in general in the US, is just the enormous amount of money it takes to break a film out. And as Ted said, you know, the next weekend, everyone's excited because you only dropped 50% your box office. That world's gonna have to change. And you know, part of it is, as an industry, I believe, you know, shifting away from the carpet bombing of advertising everywhere and everywhere, but to a more targeted type of way. And I think that's gonna happen over time. I mean, we, for instance, one of the things with Facebook, again, that we did is we asked them to take a look and said, hey, tell us how many people mention a Miramax film in their user profile, and how many are fans of the top 25 directors, actresses, and actresses. And we thought they were gonna come back, you know, Sheryl Sandberg, who's a friend, we thought they were gonna come back and say, oh, it's 500,000 people. It was 50 million people. And, you know, clearly there's an opportunity there to sell our product, but long-term to market to that audience in a very targeted way, a very drone-like way, try to do that. Something that's kind of interesting to me, and I think ultimately where the industry is gonna have to evolve in order to continue to do the great films that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way that people use film to identify themselves is, you know, really a key to social media. Yeah. I mean, because it's universal symbols, people know who you are because of the movies that you like and the movies that you love. You know, that's what has us excited about working with Facebook too. So.
Hey, well, speaking of Facebook, you know, friend or foe, you know, clearly Reed's on the board of Facebook, so there's got to be some relationship there that is part of it. Yeah. What's your view of Netflix and Facebook?
Yeah, look, I don't know. For us, we're more of a channel than a platform, and they're clearly a platform. And I think that certainly all their activities in selling content have not been directly in our business model. And I really do think that the business model of buying and renting and commercial supported content are very distinct and unique businesses.
Right.
And for us, you know, the premium subscription model is the only thing we focus on. So we're, you know, a one-trick pony, one product company. So we're not threatened by or worried about cable television. In fact, we think we're really complementary to cable. I bring this up in the context of, you know, is Facebook a friend or foe?
Yep.
And so I think that for us, the key is, if you look at what consumers value at home on television with their cable subscription, what they value clearly is sports and live events.
Yep.
So you look at what costs the most and what do people spend the most time watching. And it's sports and American Idol and the X Factor and shows like this. And we're not in that space at all.
Right.
So we don't have any live content. We're not pursuing live content. And the same thing I think is true when people say, well, you know, iTunes and Amazon, and they do this and that. So Amazon is entered into, you know, by licensing some of the same content that we do for kind of, they are giving it away with Amazon Prime as they're developing. So what they're developing feels a little more directly competitive perhaps. But so far things like iTunes selling product has not been.
Hasn't affected you.
No, and we stay out of that business on purpose because it's very helpful for us to be agnostic in that space, so that we can be distributed on Apple TV and the Xbox, all those people who are in the VOD business. So we don't want to be competing with them in the VOD business. And we think, more importantly, we think the subscription business is plenty big.
Right, right. So should we open up for questions?
Sure, sure.
So I guess I'll moderate. Are there any questions? Yes, right there. I think we have Mike for you.
Hi. Oh, hello. Yeah. Thanks for a fantastic discussion. I was going to ask you what you've learned from the music industry in regards to digital and rights, because obviously you've got experience there, and I guess you guys have been following what they've done. What have you learned, for better or worse, from how they've approached this?
Thank you. So I actually have done a little bit in the music business. At my previous experience, I did a lot of work at working with the music industry on MySpace. And I think a couple big lessons that I take away, and you should jump in here. The first is that while everyone does focus on piracy for the music industry, what's really interesting is that's not the biggest issue within the music industry. The biggest issue has been all the stores around the world that used to sell CDs that no longer exist, and that all that digital world that used to be at $10, $12, $13 now is at 99 cents. That in of itself is a big issue just in terms of the economics.
Walmart changed the music business more than Napster.
Yeah, no question. Yeah. And then second is the fact, again, with all due respect to an incredibly strong company and a great company, Apple is the strongest company in the music industry. And that because there was not enough competition, or still to this day not enough competition, that as an industry you really can't then influence packaging, merchandising, pricing, all the things that are critical, and that quite frankly are all as part of the kind of symbiotic relationship between content owners and distributors. You really want win-win situations where as distributors you make a lot of money and you feel happy about what content you have, and as content owner you get fair value. And I think as an industry in the movie business, we have to be very cognizant of that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we did our deal with Netflix. That's one of the reasons we also did our deal with Hulu in the US, is that we want multiple players to emerge and to be successful. Because Ted's a great guy, I like him a lot, but if he's the only game in town 5 years from now, it may not be as good a negotiation as it was the first time. And I just feel like that's really important as an industry, that we try to allow multiple players in every market around the world. Clearly, there will be a Netflix-like player. There'll be the major television players that will want to have their own digital offering. And I think our goal as an industry should be to have as many as possible, and may the best service win in the end.
I would only add that the demise of retail obviously was a big accelerator against the music business, but another one was taking away something that consumers wanted. So the consumers were still buying singles when they moved to the CD business and took away singles. So I do think that there was a big driver of that. I also think they pulled back on artist development in ways that impacted the excitement of music long term too. And those things don't affect the movie business. But I do think that the big lesson is when consumers tell you what they want, give it to them. Figure out a way to give it to them, because they will figure it out. They'll figure out a way to get it.
Yes. Oh, yes, sorry.
Hi, Ted. Tim Spark from Joining the Docs TV and Mercury Media. I've got 75 of the best documentaries made in the last 3 years, winning IDFA awards, all sorts of things. How do I get them on Netflix?
For what part of the world?
I've got all international rights. How do I get them? How do we communicate with Netflix?
Well, there is context space on the website of how to get to us. We're here, and we've a bunch of us here this week, working this floor and working with with other content aggregators. I'll give you a shortcut, which is Lisa Nishimura oversees a lot of our multi-territory licensing of programming like this.
What's her name?
And if you can catch me after her, I'll give you an email address.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's a very specific question there.
I'm available if you want any Miramax films as well.
This is a question for Ted. Ted, with the breakout of Quickster from the Netflix brand, you've kind of disrupted your own disruption. And just wondering, from the US perspective, what do you foresee as the future interoperability between the Netflix streaming service and the Quickster DVD by mail service?
It's a great question. It was, I think, a huge reaction to the notion that the interoperability would go away. And we definitely have heard that, and we're working on that. And we'll announce something over the next couple of weeks that'll kind of lay out how that will play out over time. I'm very convinced that what we're doing is good for the long-term health of the business and the long-term clarity of the brand. But we also hear our customers, and we want to make sure we react to that. So.
I'm Thomas Baubin from ITV Solutions in Germany, and we run one of the first European, I believe, one of the first truly cloud-based locker services. We see some interest, but not a strong uptake yet in Germany for locker products. And one of the reasons, of course, is that SWOT is more important for many consumers. So what are you planning to do? Question to you, Mike. What are you planning to do to get more demand for locker?
So, well, one thing with locker is that if the world ends up evolving with people having 20 lockers, it will never work, right? And so I do think that my instinct is that ultimately there has to be one or two major technology companies that create the digital locker where you store everything, not just maybe shows or films, but your personal photos, personal videos, documents, whatever, you know? and that there's a call to action, that there's a benefit to that just in terms of not only ease of use and getting rid of those big DVD towers we all might have still at home, but also backup insurance. You know, like if there's a fire, the first thing I start going to is all the photographs, you know, not my films, I hate to say. And so to the ability to do that, I think we'll have a big advantage. But number two, related to your question, is I do think the product does have to evolve. There has to be something unique. When the DVD was created, one of the big things that really differentiated was the special edition product that enabled people to see things behind the scenes and get information. That's kind of worn its way out now. It's still valuable, but it's not enough maybe to get someone to buy as it used to be. I think as an industry, we have to be very creative, whether that means even more content. Maybe it's downloadable content afterwards, like the gaming industry that's done that very successful in terms of their ability to bring out more content. Yeah. Maybe it's around music and trying to integrate music more into the product. But we just think the more we can test and try different things out there, that's in addition to just a technology basis, is a way to solve the problem.
Hi, I'm a question for Ted. You talked about you know, this Lilyhammer thing and House of Cards. We'd always sort of thought that Netflix was more older content, you know, series catch up. You know, you talked about, you know, ODing on, you know, looking at box sets and things like that. It seems like you're moving much more into newer content. You know, how much more? Are you going to do a lot of these things? Do you have budgets for these, or are you going to do one or two, just sort of breakouts, or is it going to become a big part of your business? You
know, our DNA is that of a tech company, so we do a lot of A/B testing, and we do a lot of live testing of initiatives and ideas. This is a very large commitment, but it's a very small relative to our total content spend. And what we're looking at is, like I said, I think the motivator was, is this going to be the best source for high quality, very serialized content? And that is the trade-off. And we're going to try to do things that are different than everybody else. So things like trying not to premiere a single episode and make the people wait every week, like more like TV. Maybe we'll premiere multiple episodes so that you can do the binge watching from day one. So this gives us the ability to be much more nimble about positioning the content with our consumers. And we'll increase the spend on it if the take-up is good. If it turns out to be the more effective way to spend money, then we'll do that as well. And what's really exciting to me is that all of the English language production that's happening all over the world has made this a fairly competitive space. So, I mean, when we announced House of Cards, I must have got every pitch meeting of every show ever conceived in the last 20 years. But
many agents would like to talk to you after
that, I'm sure, I bet I have already spoken to them. But what's great is I think we landed on some things that will give us a really good taste for how well these things will work. You know, I think Lilyhammer, I think, is a great example of a show that would be, you know, very difficult to break into the U.S. market because of the preconceived notion for buyers. And I think it's going to be very successful.
One of the things, just to kind of build on it, is that, you know, with these questions, I don't think any of us have the answers. I think it's really about trying and innovating and testing things out and being willing to, in some cases, fail, but learn from that and then apply in different ways. And part of the issue with the industry is it's so difficult to try things. You know, contracts, windows, history, ways things have been done in the past. And again, we'd love nothing better at Miramax to watch other companies. I mean, our partner Lionsgate has done some really interesting things, not only digitally, but on Facebook and things like that we've been watching and trying to emulate what they do, because clearly that's the only way that we'll be able to learn and try to do these different kinds of things and be able to grow as an industry as a result.
I think the net result, too, is that for most of our suppliers, we just become it becomes a new category. So we can buy original programming as well as season catch-up, as well as licensing their movies in their pay TV windows.
Hi, I'm Spanish, working in the Spanish market. And Netflix announced you're coming in January, thank you. And on the other hand, I mean, I'm sure you know, there's a huge rate of piracy in Spain. Downloading music, videos, whatever can be pirate. So I wonder why you chose Spain in the first place, and having in mind there's this huge rate of piracy.
Well, we haven't announced or confirmed that we're coming to Spain. So hypothetically, the high rate of piracy was one of the things that made actually Spain attractive. It's a very digitally connected consumer base. Mike alluded to this earlier. I believe that people would much rather interact with legitimate content suppliers than to steal content. Both from a confidence level, from a quality of delivery model, and the way to do that is to give them a very well-aggregated, well-executed, well-priced access to content from the internet to their television. So if given the opportunity to do business with legitimate suppliers, I believe that the people will. I think and the other thing is that the consumers in Spain are actually paying for product. They're paying for content. They're just paying pirates instead of paying legitimate suppliers. So the only one not getting paid is the studio. And what we're trying to do is introduce a model where content owners get paid. We were very pleased, we've been very pleased with what's happening in Canada. We've been in Canada for just over a year. Prior to Netflix entering Canada, the largest supplier of video content online was BitTorrent. And in less than a year, Netflix surpassed BitTorrent as the largest supplier of digital content, and BitTorrent has been on the decline. So we're better than free in that case. And that's what we're trying to do in other territories. And we feel like this is something we have to get really good at, because Spain is not the only place in the world where people are stealing content. And I do feel like the people have an appetite for content, which is great. They are digitally connected, which is fantastic. And that as long as we give them a good, well-priced, dependable product, that we can compete in that space.
Well, I think we ran out of time. Again, I appreciate everybody coming today. Again, thank you for your interest. Thanks for inviting us to be part of this, and look forward to coming to many MIPCOMs in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, that was great. So Charlie Rosish.